Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's edition of HR Mentorship Book Review Session. This is the fifth book, if I'm not mistaken, we are reviewing back to back, thanks to our ever reliable and consistent discussant, Ezinne Obiora, who needs no introduction. And today we are privileged, highly honored, to have the very first male intentional reviewer. And his name is Simon Osazua. Just because of some people who may not know him, I will read only his profile. Ezinne, next time, don't be
No problem, by all means.
All right, so Simon is a member of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management. He's an associate member. He also has a Master's of Science. He's an HR management specialist with strong business acumen, and he believes in rebranding employers and branding employees of organization for optimum productivity. His areas of specialization includes learning and development, talent acquisition and management, company formulation, leadership development, and performance management. He is currently the lead consultant at Esonosa Consulting and an external consultant to some management consulting firms. He also specializes in developing individuals to become value-adding and impactful personalities. He is popularly known as the personality developer. Little Wonder is with us on this call tonight to help develop our personality capabilities and earning potentials even more. At this point, it is my privilege and pleasure to hand over to Ezinne and Simon. You have the floor.
Thank you, Yemi. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to another book review. Like Yemi correctly said, this is our fifth book review for the year, for 2023. I think we've done pretty good. Well done to all of us. And like Yemi said, I'm delighted that Simeon has broken the jinx of having men be on this table, because at a point it seemed like it was only women that read. But Simon has proven to us that men indeed read. So I'm delighted to have Simon as my co-discussant in our review of the book, our book for the month, HR Strategy, Creating a Strategy Using Human Capital by Paul Cairns. So before I get into it, I noticed that I was talking with Yemi before we started. I noticed that not too many reviews came out of the book. I'm interested. It will be nice. I mean, as we're going through the reviews, please feel free to put in your comments. But I did see, there was some conversation around it, but I didn't really see too many reviews, and I'm interested to know why. Because compared to the last book, the book for March, this was a tad bit easier. I know, at some point it was a drag, but it was quite an interesting book to read. So without wasting much time, I'm going to just delve right into it. So how it's going to be is Simeon and I will alternate. So I'll start with the introduction and chapter 1. Then Simeon will come in. He will do some review, and then I will come in. It will just be an intermittent thing, an alternating thing. And like I said, if you do have any comments to add as we go through the review, please just drop it in the chat box. If we do have enough time, we can touch on some of the things that you raise. Yeah. Okay. So let me start off from the introduction. The author talked about seeing HR strategy as being vague, and really, if you think about it, let me not say if I ask anyone here, maybe people might be able to rightly define what HR strategy is, but I've had conversations with people and people couldn't seem to really pinpoint what exactly the HR strategy for an organization was. And I also stated, and I've said this before in a review we've had in one of the months, that it wasn't until a later part of my career, I won't say really later, but it wasn't at the early part of my career, I couldn't really tell what a HR strategy was until it was really broken down. And that's what the author is saying. He's saying that he's always seen it he sees it as referred to as being vague, right? But he's saying that you should, the first golden rule of strategy is for you to do what works for you. So don't copy what another company is doing. And if we go down our review, we'll see the story of Toyota, how certain companies wanted to copy, Toyota, Ford, and all that. Don't copy what another company is doing. Do what works for you, but just know that it's not going to be an easy ride. And once we go through the review, we'll see that yes, this is actually not an easy ride. But the essence of having a strategy is so that if you have a strong HR strategy, it anchors the company to weather through storms. We've had things that have happened, trends that have happened in the world, things like economic downturns that have led to things like downsizing, recruitment freezes, and all that, which could shake an organization to its core. But if for a company to be resilient and stand strong, it means that it's anchored in a strong HR strategy. So that's the author is saying and emphasizing that is something that a company should have, to stand the test of time. But then he's saying that, and he has reiterated it throughout the book, that it's not just about having a HR strategy. And what I like about these books we've read, there seems to be a thread of commonality. There are certain things that they're all saying, but probably saying it a different way. One thing, a lot of the books we've read, or all the books we've read, have said is that you can't have HR function alone. And this book is saying you can't have a HR business, you can't have a HR strategy alone. It has to be enmeshed with a business strategy for it to work effectively. And that is what gives birth to what is called a HR business strategy. And if you notice throughout the book, it wasn't called the HR strategy, it was called the HR business strategy because it had to be enmeshed with business. And for this strategy to work, now, don't be mistaken, it's not HR's job. The book says, or the author says, that the major responsibility lies on the CEO. It's the CEO that is the owner of this process, right? As HR, you're there as an advisor. So, but the mistake that some companies make is that they push it all to HR. No, that's not the case. It's not HR's baby, it's the CEO's baby. But then HR is there to advise and guide, and lead accordingly. So you're there to be an advisor to the CEO and board executive, showing them how to unpack the strategy. And remember, in our book 1 in January, where we talked about HR in the boardroom, remember how we talked about how you need to be in the boardroom? You see how it's reflected here. So once you're in the boardroom, this is your work. You're supposed to be there to guide CEO and the board members on how to unpack the strategy, the HR business strategy for the company. So he says, to get a first impression about this book, you need to look at your company from 2 perspectives. First of all, look at it without a business strategy, a HR business strategy. How would it fare? Maybe you're in that state right now. How is it faring? And then look at it, if it did have a HR business strategy, how it would fare. And then look at the difference and then see how worth it is for you to go on that journey. Now, in the one without the strategy, you find that there is low trust. There's a low trust environment, It's strange for a manager to approach a senior manager to talk about things that they are challenges that they are facing, because you're afraid that they don't have your back. So, like I said, there's low trust, right? But on the other hand, when there's a HR business strategy, there are processes in place, right? You are not afraid to say things. You're not afraid to speak your mind. You're not afraid to talk about your challenges because there are systems in place. Nobody can just walk up to you and fire you just like that. There's a strategy in place. So things cannot just, people cannot just wake up and do things. They have to follow a process. So there's safety in being open, and there's no fear of reprisal because of the culture that exists based on that strategy. And then the HR business strategy is not a lengthy document that you write pages and pages and pages of, but it's a journey, it's a long-term commitment, and you don't achieve it overnight. You don't achieve it in one day. It's something that you dedicate yourself to making sure that your organization functions in tandem with it, right? And it's a conscious way to manage the organization's capital, which is what the book suggests. The title suggests human capital to gain a competitive advantage. So you want to place your company in a point where it is providing high value. It stands out above everyone. But then you can only do that when you manage your human capital to be able to achieve that competitive advantage. You can't do that without a HR business strategy. So again, it says HR and business cannot be treated separately. They are inseparable. That's what makes it a HR business strategy. It's not HR strategy alone and then business strategy alone. You're just on your way to failure. Now, it says that yes, the development of this strategy is very complex. It takes time, but then as long as you're determined, you will definitely you understand it as you go on the journey. As you take a step, when you want to start something, the first step is the hardest, right? But then as you proceed, it starts to get easier. So that's how it is. But then as you take this journey, you must break it down in clear terms. I remember one of the books that we reviewed, we talked about this and we said, if the front desk person in your office does not understand what the strategy of the business is, then you need to go back to the drawing board. You need to make your strategy so easy and so clear that even the person at the front desk can determine how they feed into the strategy of the company, how they contribute to the strategy. So that's what the author is saying. You need to break it down in clear terms to every stakeholder. And every stakeholder means, in this case, every employee in the company. So that's for the introduction. We go into chapter 1, which talks about what the purpose of HR business strategy is. Now, the major purpose is just to forecast the future for your people. So a strategy is just telling people this is where we are looking to go, right? But for you to want them to go on that journey with you, you have to tell them, you have to make them understand the journey. So I decided that, okay, you guys, we're going somewhere. I say, jump in the car. You will look at me funny and be like, yeah, what is she up to? But if I say, because people will ask questions, say, where are we going to? Nobody's going to just jump into the car and say, oh, yeah, we're going. Except there's a high level of trust that, I trust her. I trust that she's not taking me anywhere strange. But, in this case, maybe that trust is not there. So for you to trust me enough to get into the vehicle with me, you have to know where we're going to, right? So that's what he's saying. The company needs to let the company know where it's planning to go. Let its people know where it's planning to go to get their buy-in to go on that journey. And you need to make sure that whatever strategy you're putting together puts you on a competitive advantage, sets you apart. Because if it doesn't, why else are you even setting a strategy? And if you fail with your people, because your people that will interpret that strategy, that will implement that strategy to put you at a competitive advantage, if you fail with your people, then your stakeholders, external, internal, will not get the best value out of you. That's why it is important for HR to be integrated into a business strategy. Now, like I said, make sure your people are willing to go on the journey with you, which is why you have to point it out in clear terms where you're going to, right? Now, what information do you have available to make sure that your forecast is accurate? I say, okay, guys, we're going to Ibadan, and the plan is for us to get to Ibadan by tomorrow, 8 o'clock. What's the information I have that's going to determine that we're going to get there? Is it accurate, right? Has this information been subjected to rigorous analysis? We can't ignore the fact that I may have done all the traffic check, checked everything, checked Google Maps and all that, but that sometimes things go wrong, right? What we forecasted may not necessarily go as planned, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to make forecasts, right? Because you can't now gamble your company. You can't gamble the chances of your company. Take a chance. You set yourself up for more danger. So making a forecast is better than making none at all, so that you're not a victim of chance. So a leader needs to take risks. As a leader, you will take risks to open yourself up to the door of opportunities, because if you don't take risks, you stifle innovation. It's when you take those risks, you open yourself up to, as you make mistakes, you learn. Remember I said that the strategy is a journey. It's not something that is a verbose document, it's a journey. So as you're making those mistakes, you're learning and you're getting better. The steps are getting easier. So managing these risks requires a strategy that will keep the organization anchored. So that strategy is so important, so that in the midst of tested times, when the rains come, when trouble comes, you stay anchored, you stay put, and resilient in the middle of it. And it's a delicate balancing act, right, between acceptable risk taking. So when I say take risk, does not mean that you should now go and throw your company and then say, oh, yeah, isn't it said, the author said take risks, or if you go and advise your CEO, oh, let's jump off the cliff. No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying make sure that the risks you're taking are acceptable, but then you have to know so there's a fine line between taking those risks and then outright gambling. So you also have to note the difference between those two. But it's important to have a strategy because it sets a tone and a direction for the organization. So if we're going on a journey, I know where we're going to, then we begin to map out the journey. We begin to map out how we're taking that journey. So it sets a tone. So people are not just walking, without course, without direction. They know where they are going to. And that's why, so I don't know how it works. Some companies, what it is that they do every year or every 2 years, they have a strategy. So you know that all of us are working towards one goal. It just helps make your work focused, streamlined, so that you're not just working without direction. Yeah, so it's an art. The author says it's an art. It's like you're on the battlefield, right? You're face to face with your enemies in hot pursuits to defeat you. So what do? You need to have a strategy. Your enemies are there, you're on the battlefield, and the enemies are coming. You have to have a plan to be steps ahead of them, or else they'll overtake you and defeat you, right? So you need to understand who your enemy is, or in this context, your competitors. So that's why your strategy needs to have intelligence. So you don't just plot a strategy blindly. You have to have information when you're plotting your strategy, so that it's not like you're poking in the dark. So an efficient strategy should be able to understand its competition and should also not underestimate the importance of context. Yeah, I think I had a conversation with someone today, and we're talking about how this book applies. We're talking this book, yes, a lot of its context is the Western climes, but then we can also draw lessons that can apply in our climes. So whenever you're plotting your journey, make sure that you're taking into context the climb in which you exist, the climb in which you work, so you know what works for you and what works best. Remember at the beginning we said, don't copy, don't go and take another person's strategy, do what works for you. So the HR business strategy is not about being nice to people, but it's just about making sure to bring value out of them while subduing their worst tendencies. And if we go down the line, we'll see how the kind of people you can find or you would find in the workplace. So we're not saying that you're coming out to rare angels. You will have a mixture of people, but how can you bring out value from all those diverse people? Now, what is a high value organization? It's not about making great profit. That doesn't make you a high value organization. It's your people. It's the value of your people, which is determined by strategy. So different strategies will bring out different levels of value in people. That's why somebody could work here and produce such value, and the person could work in a different place, and the person is functioning on a different level. And it has happened to me. I've worked in a particular place and I've worked somewhere else, and I was such a top performer. It had to do with the strategy, how the strategy was put in place to bring out more value from me. So you can, different strategies will bring out different versions of you, right? But as a HR strategist, put forward to your organization what it would look like. I remember I said it earlier. Think about it, or look at your organization, what it will look like with a strategy, HR business strategy, and without. And so you put it forward as an advisor to the CEO, as to the management, and say, this is what it would look like without a HR business strategy, and this is what it would look like with one. And you choose and decide, which one you want to go. And I think if you sell it well, I'm pretty sure they want, something that will bring value to them, to the organization. But yeah, you can see when you just let them know that the impact of that strategy may not be immediately evident. Remember, we said that it's a long-term journey, it's a long journey. So you may have little wins by the side, but the overall impact might not be immediately evident. So that needs to be known. I mentioned Toyota. Toyota implemented a strategy that worked for them, and Ford and GM tried to replicate it and failed. So do what works for you. Don't say, oh, because MTN is doing this, oh, because Shell is doing this, let me come and replicate it in my company. You will just fail woefully. You have to understand context. And why did they even fail? Because they took one component and, without replicating the whole system. But, replicating the whole system takes work, but it's only with replicating the whole system that you get results. But then again, I will emphasize, make sure that whatever even if you're replicating, you have to consider context, very important. Now, the Toyota case study, he went into detail, but it just says it's an exception because it represents a perfect example of a well-implemented integrated HR business strategy. You don't find so many companies on that level, yeah? it's something to glean from, it's something to learn from, but it's really a lot of work in progress and a lot of work that was put in to making sure that happens. And as we delve down the line in review, you will see that so many companies are not there yet, are not even close to it. Yeah. So, like I said, and the author is agreeing, says more examples like this are yet to be seen. Because organizations are more carried away with the fluffy things, initiatives, more than intentional strategies, or even worse, things that are not fit for purpose. Remember, I talked about context. Don't go and carry what another company is doing and think that it can work in your company when you don't have the same scenarios or same context. So more often than not, these things start with a lot of noise, things are rolled out, everybody's making a lot of noise about it, there's fluff, and before you know it, everything just crashes, boom, you don't hear anything about it again because it was not well thought out. It was not, there was not a lot of thoughts taken into it. It's like, oh, this looks nice, it's a nice to have, let's do it, without thinking about context. So, and the reason why it also fails because there's no buy-in from people. So you don't just go and bring things, initiatives without carrying people along. Remember, we talked earlier and said, before you start off your strategy, you have to make your people understand in clear terms what that strategy is so that they can buy into it. So that's really, what's the word? A recap of the introduction and chapter 1. I will hand over to Simeon to take us in the next chapters, and then I will come in afterwards in chapter 3.
Okay, thank you very much. Isn't it? Thank you. That was fantastic. It was great. That was great. It was wonderful. I actually have something to say, but based on analysis, because we are critical thinkers, we are discussing. I just think the author is also quite subjective in his reasoning, because it's something that actually sometimes doesn't apply to like a Nigeria client, but with regards to what he wrote book. Like looking at chapter 1, I was talking about HR strategy is about predicting the future for your employees. Is actually very, 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 very correct, but actually you can actually absolutely predict the future for your employees because you can't really tell the behavior of your employees. But when he went further in the book, he was able to establish that you can actually coordinate or actually control human behaviors completely. So when you talk about predicting the future for your employees, it's more like giving them like a roadmap course of action. Also, I didn't actually hear you mention something that I think is very critical to the author's thoughts. He said in that same chapter 1 that HR strategy is meant to like control employees while controlling them, also making them fulfill or actualize their potentials. So what it actually means that HR strategy set the pace for employees to also showcase their potentials, skills as well, even towards where the company is heading to. Well, thank you very, very much, isn't it? I was just enjoying the discourse, also enjoying the expression from your voice. So thank you very much. So let me move straightly to chapter 2. So I'll just be giving a brief recap with regards to chapter 2 and sharing my thoughts as well in chapter 2. Chapter 2 was actually talking about HRO business strategy is a new generic option. HR business strategy is a new generic option. Thank you very much. I don't know if you can actually see the same distractions on your screen. Thank you. If there's anybody helping out, can they just be moving the distractions? Thank you very much. Okay, chapter 2, the writer actually said that HR business strategy is a forward-facing strategy which can actually be understood by insights. What it means that HR strategy looks forward to the future. It's something that is already looking at where the company wants to get to, and in order for the management or the CEO, as the case may be, for people to understand the strategy, it must be looked into with insight. In order to understand the components of the strategy, the author went on to say that the core of HR strategy should be towards the well-being of the employees. That deducing from that chapter 2, it was the well-being of the employees. That one thing is about you having this robust strategy for your employees. Another thing is about you implementing that strategy, as rightly mentioned during the introduction, that people might have very fancy strategy, but implementing it is a core part, is the main part. So they also actually pointed out that what management of companies should actually do is to care for their. So what does that mean? You should not just be concerned about the work or concerned about the profit, concerned about what the productivity, but you should also be concerned about the well-being of the employees. And they also usually said that this might be written on paper, like we have policies, like we have like compensation and benefit policies in organizations, but do they actually carry out these policies to the letter? That's what the author was actually talking about. Not just having these interesting policies for employee well-being, catering for the employee, or that shows that you care for the employees, but are these policies actually implemented? It's just like let me give like a simple example, which was not actually expressly said in the book, or like some organization have like a sick leave. They have like a sick leave policy for sick leave. And you see sometimes when some employees are genuinely sick, we have worked some firms like manufacturing firms, when the employees are genuinely sick and they come and ask that, please, can I take a sick leave? Even with a doctor's report, like saying that this person needs to go on a bed rest. You see some managers, management team not aligned or accepting that particular request. But on paper, it shows that they have a policy that supports what the employee well-being, but in actual implementation is not there. So this is what the author was actually trying to express, because you caring for your employees is a strategy. Having policies that support your employee well-being is a wonderful strategy, but implementing it is the best part of the whole thing. So you see so many companies talk about employee engagement. So many companies talk about talent management. How many companies actually implement talent management? How many companies invest into the learning and development aspects of the company or that concerns the staff? So it's not just about talking about on paper. We are concerned about managing staff, but there's a procedure for talent management, or there's a particular part of the policy that talks ways of engaging employees in the organization, but in actual practice, it's not there. So this is one of the things that the author was actually trying to point out. So these are one of the things. And he says, and the author made it clear that when you are concerned about your staff or employees will be concerned about your business. What does that mean? That your employees being satisfied in your company will directly influence with the outcome of your business. So that they also actually pointed out there. And they also actually made it clear that a real HRO business strategist must seek direct and closer connection to be made between a continuous trend in organizational improvement and human capital practice. That a real HRO business strategist, and which we as HRO practitioners or professionals are meant to be, we must seek a direct connection to be for continuous trend in organizational improvement. So we must seek for an improvement in organization, and also a development in the human capital. Not just for us to see that business processes are improved, not just to see that profitability is achieved, even in organization, but we also see to it that the human capital in that organization is being developed. And I want to point out something that came to my mind while I was reading this particular chapter, that it's very important that we understand that human capital starts even from the management of the organization. The management staff, the CEO, is part of the human capital of that particular company. So whenever as HRO business strategists, we are thinking about the company or thinking about the business improvement plans and all that, we should also consider that the human capital development starts from the CEO himself or herself, or the board of directors of the management staff. So that's very, very important to keep in mind. So accounting for people helps provide organizations with a framework to demonstrate effectiveness of their people strategies, their impact on business, and their impact on business performance. When you account on people, when you account on what people do and how people fare in the organization, it will definitely show the effectiveness of the strategy, of business strategy, HR strategy. So the author went ahead to further explain individual aspects of this particular framework. So the author gave a framework in which you can actually show the effectiveness of actually help for HR business strategy to be effective, help for human capital development to be effective, help for business improvement plans to be effective. So the author actually gave a framework, and it started the framework with number one, vision. Vision. What this model of this particular framework actually talking about is that the CEO must have a vision. The CEO must have a vision. The vision must be a clear general course in which the company is headed to. It's very, very important that the CEO, as isn't it actually said, that the CEO is the key, or let's use the word, the number one person that should drive the HRO business strategy, not just an affair of or a responsibility of the HRO manager, or HR officer, or the HRO department. So what this author actually pointed out here in this first model, in this framework, is that the CEO must have a vision. So there must be, the CEO must be able to set a general course for which the business strategy should head towards. So it's very important that, and he mentioned here a very profound statement, that CEOs that do not have a vision or are not prepared to commit themselves to this vision should not expect commitment from their employees. CEOs that don't have a vision, that don't have a clear picture of the general course towards which the company should be headed towards. It should not expect such commitment from their staff. It's that's a profound statement. So you should not expect what you are not committed to as a CEO. But that's not what we see today in companies in Nigeria or this part of the world, maybe Africa, that you see some CEOs or directors want you to carry out this particular aspect of their vision, but they are not committed to that aspect of the business. So, but the author is trying to disabuse that and say that if you as a CEO, you want people to follow or to be committed to that business strategy, you need to also be committed to the vision. So the author went on to bring up another model in this particular framework in achieving an effective HRO business strategy. And the other model said is a mission, and he called that the value statement. So I just want to quickly read this particular statement by the author in my summary. The author used Robert Towns and car hire firm Avis Rent a Car to show a classic mission statement. I'm saying this just to drive home the point of this value statement. And this mission statement of Robert Towns, that's the owner of car hire, Avis Rent a Car, it says, become the number one in driverless hire vehicles. Become the number one in driverless hire vehicles. It's worthy to know that there's a possibility of your mission statement to be perceived as meaningless unless you put a great deal of thought into it. So the author pointed out in this particular aspect, your vision statement or your mission statement can be meaningless if you don't put a great deal of thought into it. Like this particular Robert Towns Avis Rent a Car, he says that to be the number one driverless hire vehicles. So it shows that the value statement there is that you should be able to meet the demands of your clients or customers at every time. You should be number one whenever you need them to be there. If you go through the book, you see when the author expanded on this. Whenever you need them, whenever you need a car, whenever you need someone to drive you around, whenever you want to go somewhere, they are number one that you need to look out for. So you see that Robert Towns has already reasoned and looked at the future of the company before drafting that value statement, as the case may be. So that's why, as it was rightly said, that HRO business strategy is looking at the future, looking into the future of your employees or the business. So the author also went on to bring up another model from that particular framework, which is task strategy, which is called strategy. And I will just read from my summary here. If you do not include a mention of your employees' needs in your mission statement, you have already sent a very negative signal that they are not part of the big picture. If you don't mention your employees' needs, what does this mean? When you are discussing your mission statement with your employee, make sure you are able to show that they are part of the whole thing. Let your mission statement show that they are part of the whole thing. It's just like I want, like some people have some core values that shows that carries respect for one another in some organizations. So your mission statement should also carry that you value your employees. It should show that you value your employees. So the author actually gave these three models to actually show how you can have an effective business, effective HRO business strategy. Number one, it talks about vision. This is upon the CEO, talks about the value statement, and the last one talks about the strategy. So we can see from this particular model that everything rises and falls on the CEO. So it's very, very important. But nevertheless, the drivers of this CEO's vision, CEO's value statement, that's a mission statement, this CEO strategy, the major driver is the HRO business strategist. That's if you're an HRO manager. I think that's virtually all that the author said, talked about. Three. So thank you very much. I think I will just leave it for Ezinne to take over.
Thank you, Simeon. One thing that stood out from what you said, because I had a conversation with someone about this, and a person had the impression that this book was given the responsibility to the HR person. I was like, no, the CEO is the owner, but I like the word you use. The HR person is the driver. So at the end of the day, it's a partnership. Yeah. It's not something that the CEO is going to rest his feet, back and say, you do the work. No, you're working in tandem with, as a HR person, you're working in tandem with CEO and the other board members. So without wasting time, we'll go to chapter 3, which talks about what is strategic HR business looks and feels like. There are a number of basic principles that Paul listed. However, I'm going to just talk about the ones that particularly stood out to me. These are the principles that are used, that is HR strategists, which is you and I, these are the principles we're to follow when designing an organization, when you're putting together that strategy. First of all, realize that organizations require leadership, right? And that would then mean that there's a need for hierarchy. Because if there's no leadership, there's no hierarchy, there's going to be, what would result would be anarchy. You don't want anarchy, because with anarchy comes chaos. You want structure to your system. So of course there has to be leadership. There has to be someone that's steering the ship, which is why we talked about the CEO and then HR strategists, being the driver of this strategy bus. Then there must be accountability. I think accountability, if we really talk about it in our clients, accountability seems to be a problem. But then somebody has to take the buck, Simon, you agree with me? It's a problem. It's a big problem.
It's a big problem.
Yeah, but then he's saying for the strategy to work, there has to be accountability. And please, the buck cannot rest on HR. HR, we have suffered every time HR, not just HR. Some people at the top have to take accountability for this. Yeah. If it fails, we're responsible. If it succeeds, because the thing is, how it is with parents, when the child is not doing well, it's your child, it's your child, it's your child. When the child is doing, it's our child, it's our child. No. When it fails, we are all there's somebody, there are people that are taking the blame or the buck or whatever it is. And when it succeeds, we're all, the same people will take accountability. So that's what Paul says. And he also says that as much as these things don't reflect in reality, when I read this, I laughed. He said, as much as they don't, they're actually not reflected in reality, there must be organizational charts. I think everybody will laugh with that, because if you really think about it, when you have an organizational chart in your company, do you really follow is that actual reflection of things?
Yeah, well, thank you, isn't it? Thank you. Sorry to come in there. Thank you.
No.
When I read that, I was like, this author just finished it there, and it's actually true. So working with various organizations as a consultant, I just see this is a practical display of what happens. Sometimes after drafting the organogram for them and drafting organizational chart for them, designing it for them, we see after that some of them just put it aside, they just do what they want to do.
Exactly.
You see, there's no order, so they just want to do what they want, especially when it comes to a one-man company, in quote, as they will call it. There's hardly they hardly follow organizational charts. So that's actually true.
So it's so funny and it's so sad, because it shouldn't be a tick in the box. It shouldn't be a tick in the box. However, if you have to have an organizational chart, try to make sure that it reflects reality. So what does that mean? Continue updating, make sure that, whatever is in that chart reflects what is in reality. And then further down the line, it says something about, though it says something about frequent organizational changes, chart changes. So as much as you're updating, stay away from regular ones, because then that means that you have a bad organizational design. So even if you're going to be doing updates, let them be as minimal as possible, or else then it means that you don't know what you're doing. So, but make sure that your organizational charts reflects the reality. You wanted to say something?
Can I just say something? Yes. Thank you very much, isn't it? And with regards to organizational charts, which people commonly call organogram in organization. So what we actually do for some clients, that we give them their present capacity, and we give them a chart that shows their present capacity. Like if you have like 3 staff or 4 staff, this is a chart that shows your present capacity. So we now also give them a chart that they are going to grow into. So we give them a picture. We also design like a strategy chart for them that they are going to grow into. So this is how it should be when this company is in full running capacity. So that's what we actually do. I think that will also help.
Exactly. So it's reflecting reality, but then you have the one that is a forecast, right? It's a manpower planning thing. So that even if there's expansion, at least you're not there's not too much change. So that's it, really. Thank you, Simeon. Then it also said, these are the other things that stood out to me. It said, don't hire people who aren't open to criticism and learning. You have to hire people that will take criticism and they will learn, because if not, it will cost the company in the long run. Then do not give anybody authority beyond their capacity. Not because this person. So there's another line that says something about personal effectiveness should not be confused with organizational effectiveness. So you find someone that's fantastic about what they do, but they're not mature. They're not just mature to take on that leadership role. Don't be in a hurry to put the person in the leadership role. You have to test. You have to make sure that the person is ready. That's where you have things, your succession planning, and then you have your leadership training in place, just to, take that raw diamond and polish him, because if you thrust that person into that position of authority, you're just going to have a disaster. Then it says, ambition and talent are not always equal. Do not confuse the two during succession planning. I will not speak further. It's clear. And then it says, when there's a recommendation for a new role, ask if the role will add value. Stay away from tick the box exercises. So hiring manager calls you, managers call you, oh, we need to add this role. You need to have conversations. You shouldn't, as a HR strategy, you're not, oh, yes, sir. Anything they say, yes, sir. Ask questions. How is this role adding value to the organization? Is it what is, ask questions, have a vacancy brief, don't just have everything just thrust on you. Your job is just to go and recruit. Go beyond that, add value. Then it says, key roles should be determined by the executive management. I say determined with you in tandem with them, right? And a strong succession plan should support these roles to ensure that there's no resource scam. So for key roles, to be honest, there should have been a plan in place. What we have is that, you identify the talents based on your performance appraisals, and then, you're coaching these people into those roles. So that's how it should be. Then another one that stood out to me, because I've been there, says if you want to have a matrix organization, get your culture right. or you risk putting people in the middle of messy office politics. So interestingly, all throughout my career, I've been in that kind of setting where I'm reporting to, the least I've reported to is 2 bosses. So it's either I'm reporting to someone on project level, on corporate level, on country level, on regional level, and incidentally, they've all been men. So I used to liken it to be, as I likened it to being married to 2 husbands. So you're dealing with different egos, egos are clashing and you're in the middle of it. And they're trying to use you to hit each other's heads. This one wants to do his own bidding. And this one, so it's a lot of messy politics. I don't even know how I did it at first. There was a lot of wisdom from God, but then also, understanding how politics is, I just kept true to my job. This is my job, this is what I need to do, but I was able to still manage people's egos. So it's important that you have a strong culture, because sometimes there are things that you will not be able to get away with if there's not a strong culture to back it. So when people are trying to pitch you against them and you don't have a strong enough culture, that person will just, be crushed in the middle of that politics. So yeah, make sure that when you have that kind of setting or system, your culture is strong enough to support it. Then do not appoint someone into a managerial role just on technical merit. Oh God, this actually did happen to me, not happen to me, but it was an experience I had. It's even in not just one organization, where you see that, oh, this person is a fantastic engineer. The next thing the hiring manager said, I think he will make a great engineering manager. But the person, you now find that person is great at his job, but he does not have managerial skills. So you find that it's a disaster. I've had experiences like that. So when you see people doing well technically, I think it speaks to another point that I made earlier. Make sure that you're not just putting the person because he's technically competent, but then make sure that you're also honing the managerial skills. And then there are just some people that are just not cut out to be managers. Don't try to force it. Don't try to put a square peg in a round hole. Don't do it because he's a super performer. Some people are not meant to be managers, and don't try to force it. So yeah, a HR business strategy seeks to involve every employee in the search for more value. And a HR business strategy will be made up of different systems which are interconnected. You just need to ensure that everyone knows these systems and are in place, and that they're working, and they are in place to make sure that what the organization wants to happen happens. Now, the main limiting factor to a system is the designer and the user. It can only go as far as the designer and the user. Therefore, organizations need to be clever in designing human systems which bring out the best in people. And in dealing with these systems, there are 2 concerns: risk management, which is making sure that all human systems are foolproof, and then value maximization. How much value are these systems given, and making sure that there are no loopholes. Then another thing that Paul talked about was the culture of the system. So the culture of the system dictates the systems in use. So that's why he says it's important to tackle the inherent culture. Remember when we talked about the matrix system, that you must have a strong enough culture to back that kind of system. So make sure that the inherent culture is right before you introduce new systems, or else they might not work. However, the author says that you should redesign the systems and said, I'm a bit iffy about that. I think that the culture should be right first, for the systems to work. But then it's a thing of debates here. Then he says, as a HR business strategist, it's important to regularly do pulse checks, regularly do surveys to find out from people what they see to the organization's culture. Because you as HR, you may be thinking, oh, my place, fantastic place to work. It's good, it's good, it's good. By the time you get feedback from people, you hear something totally different. And of course, when you're hearing from a myriad of people, then there's some truth to it. So you have to do occasional pulse checks to know from people, from their, the people that are in the company, what's their own perspective on the organization's culture is, and be open to receiving the feedback. I remember we did this in, an organization we work for. We thought, oh, everything was nice. We've done all the nice to have initiatives and all that. And by the time we got feedback, it was like, oh, okay. And then we took that feedback and then we put in place initiatives to address the gaps that were identified. So yeah, systems and culture are intertwined. So in an organization where there's low trust, there will be systems in place for control. So where you see that there's low trust, there's more systems in place. but good managers put systems that will impose minimum control because they trust you. They know that, okay, to some level, they're not hovering. There's not so much of micromanagement. Where you see in an organization where you see a lot of micromanagement, you know that there's very low trust. And yeah, that's where you see a lot of systems, they're trying to clip your wings. There's so much bureaucracy here and there. The funny thing, the paradox about rigid systems is that they actually fail to successfully control people because people will try to bypass it. Have you seen that when in a place where there's so many laws, where, you have these laws up and down, people are always looking for ways, loopholes to go over it. So why don't you try to work towards having a culture that encourages less rigidity so that people feel empowered they know that they already know it's the right thing to do, but they are not afraid. It's not about them living in fear, but just them knowing that, okay, this is the right thing to do. And even without my manager breathing down my neck, I will do this because it's the right thing to do, not because somebody's looking at me. I'm not doing eye service. Structure and process should typically go hand in hand, but they rarely do. So this is where the HR business strategist has work to do. So look at your processes and your roles and see how well they mesh with your structure. Yeah, okay. So there it says now, it talks about basic learning system. So where there's a basic learning system in place, the objective would be to know what we can learn from solving the problem. So in when you have a learning system in place, it's not about who can you blame. When something happens, it's not about who to put a blame on, it's what do you learn? There's lessons learned from that thing. And so that you're shifting away from that low trust, yeah? Because when people know that it's not about who, you're not witch hunting, looking for who to blame, you're looking for what you're learning from it, there's a higher level of trust. So becoming a learning organization is often having to learn and unlearn old lessons. So the challenge for the HR business strategist is how to properly articulate what a learning system is, publicly let the people know that your organization is a learning system, and then show evidence. Because one thing to say, employees can get very cynical, especially when they've seen things play out. They're like, HR, you have come again. You say all these things, but like what Simeon said, where he's talked about policy, sick leave policy. It's in paper, but are they actually implementing it? So it's one thing to say something. It's one thing to say, oh, we care about our people. We do this, we do that. Meanwhile, what are you actually doing? So you have to show that, okay, yes, we're a learning system. We're not going to put the blame on you. Whatever mistakes that are made, we're here to learn, but then show evidence that that is actually the case. Now, in doing this, you will now need to truthfully determine where you are, where your organization is on the learning maturity scale. Wherever you are on this scale will decide what tough people management questions you need to ask. You need to ask yourself, you need to ask management. If you're top of the scale, fantastic, but then don't rest on your oars because you need to continuously evolve. However, if you're at the bottom, there's work to be done. You need to retrace your steps and ask yourself what and why you have been getting it wrong, and then forge on forward. So that's it for chapter 3. I will hand over again back to Simeon for chapter 4, and then I'll be back at the end to round up.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was wonderful. That aspect of training, actually, I like that. Very important that the organization is a learning organization, not just the too hard people when you know that you are giving them something above. There's something I usually tell clients that you should not punish somebody for something you have not done. You can't punish somebody for what he does. If you employ someone without the knowledge of this, what you're supposed to do, and you are punishing the person for what the person doesn't do, it shows that that's not fair because the person has not been. Or if you employ the person knowing that the person knows this, and you are punishing the person for what the person knows, the person did not different. So what does that mean? It's very important that employers or managers take it as a responsibility to train their staff that lacks some certain skills, certain areas. Thank you very much. So the next chapter is a chapter I actually enjoyed. I actually enjoyed the thoughts that expressed by because it's something I like. And this chapter talks about, so what's your best theory on managing people? So he's talking about people management, and this is a very core part of everyday life, even as HRO officers or HRO practitioners or professionals, even as members of staff in any organization, managing people. And he also pointed out something. He started out with something that is very interesting. He said, you being too hard on people is as counterproductive as you being too soft on people. That's when you are too hard on them, it will bring out the same result as when you are being too soft on them. So yeah, so people will ask, so what should I not do? Try not do about it. So he said that there's a standard rule of thumb to this dilemma of managing people, which is for you to be fair. That's very interesting. And you see, in most organizations that I've been exposed to, you hardly see when people are firm and fair. So that they are firm and they are not fair, or they are fair but they are not firm. And this can actually result in the same dilemma. So the author actually pointed out that very well, that there's also so many misconceptions with regards to what makes people tick in an organization, what makes people get committed. So this thought of the author was very interesting for me because it actually brought out his own assumptions, signs what made people tick, and it's actually countered as if I should put that, what the assumptions we have had before, or some people have before. It's just like the author said that people think that the most engaged employees are the happiest employees, and that's what people actually think, that that those that are actually engaged in the company, they're actually the one that have. That it shows that when you are happy, that's when you get to engage in the company. So, but he also actually pointed out that sometimes even those that are the most engaged employee, they are not the happiest employee. They just have to engage, because then they need to get their take-home pay at the end of the month.
Situation has made it
yeah.
They don't have a choice.
They have a choice than to just be an engaged employee. So, when the author said that, I said that's actually true. Actually, especially when it comes to Nigeria or this part of the world, some people are actually they're engaged employee.
They call it shuffling and smiling. Yeah, shuffling, but you're smiling.
and that's what is happening. And he also said, and the author also pointed out something there, that is not the most skilled employee that is actually the engaged employee. That is not those that have the same assumption that people that have the necessary skill for a particular thing, those that are actually the engaged employee. That's when people are engaged, while some have the skill, but they are not actually engaged with that from their emotions. Company, they're not, their mind is not actually there, but they are just there. So I think that's what they also actually said there, that employees with the greatest potential could be most disengaged simply because they are frustrated at being not there, or they don't accept in some organizations. Being the CEO or the managing partner listens to other people outside and don't listen to the staff. You get ideas from outside, and that same ideas that can actually move the company forward. You don't accept it from within. So some people with the greatest potential, they actually disengage in some companies because whenever they bring their ideas, whenever they suggest things that they know that we actually, they don't appreciate it. Their voice are not being. But these are the people that have skill. And I've seen this played at corporate times, one of the organizations I work with, that when we are having our Monday meetings, this may be then, we're having our Monday meetings, when staff suggest solutions to a particular challenge that the company is facing, the CEO tends to just push us And after maybe like a month or so, and when they see it somewhere, somebody else suggests that same solution to them, they'll tend to accept that particular solution. And with that, so many the staff became at this stage, they're not happy with it. This is not cool. And I tell you the truth, that led to a turnover. That led to increase in turnover rates, staff turnover. People start leaving the organization because they don't appreciate or celebrate their staff or the potential that they have. So that's very, very important. And they also actually mentioned that there's a magic pill to all this. It's very simple. That actually, if you appreciate your staff, if you celebrate them, they can actually be engaged in your organization. And he said that the easiest way to manage talent is for you to be concerned about. I think that this chapter 4 actually major on that, because they also went on to bring out two assumptions. The writer went to bring out two assumptions, which says that people want to be managed. We cannot be left on our own devices or expect to manage ourselves. People want to be managed. That's the truth. That's why I rightly mentioned in chapter 2 that when it comes to human capital, we should not be as HRO executives or HRO practitioners or HRO professionals. We should not look at human capital as just the staff. Like when I mean the staff, maybe just like maybe staff that your colleagues, but you forget about the CEO as part of the human capital. You forget about the managing director or the managing partner or the management staff as part of the human capital. So whenever you talk about human capital, what comes to the HR mind? Because maybe those guys, they are like up there and you can actually, it seems that they are lord of the ring, if I should use that word. So you can't just accept them. So you just tend to look at human capital as just focusing on maybe the line manager, the supervisors, the other managers, and forgetting about the CEO or the managing director as the case may be. So these are parts of the human capital. So and these people also want to be managed. That's the truth. People also want to be managed. There's according to the author, that assumption is that there's somewhere in human nature that we need to be managed. Because if you don't manage human beings, they just tend to do things that they're not supposed to. Especially when you have staff that you also call them apostles, company apostles. So what means like I also draw that as we go on in different categories of employees that you can have in your organization. Company apostles, like they are full of energy. They promote the company anywhere. They want to do everything that is best for the company and that can increase the profitability of the company. But nevertheless, you need to manage these people so they will not go and do things out of overzealousness. I should use that word. But you also use a word here which is out of over exuberance. That's the word they also used here. So you have to manage. So everyone wants to be managed. That's one of the assumptions of the. I don't know if everybody agrees with that, but I think I partially agree that people want to manage. I think, but some persons they want to be left on their own. I think let's leave that. So let's know how to be managed.
There are different schools of thought, so because you see some generations that will tell you, please just let me do my work. Don't manage me. Just tell me what to, just give me deliverables and I'll give them to you. But I think to some level, there's still some managing. It's just that it's not as intense. I think it's different levels of management. I think that's what.
Okay. I think that's fine. That's your line of thought is also very, very okay. This is an assumption from the author, which can be challenged. As I said earlier on that there are some subjective thoughts here, and there are some thoughts that can actually be implemented in our times. Let's just move on. So the second point the author pointed out with the concerns are most employees want their work to be seen, and that's true and valued. That's true. To be recognized and appreciated. That's true. See, the truth is that every human being wants appreciation. The truth is that the easiest way to make someone to do more is for you to appreciate what the person is already doing or celebrate the person at every level. So I did a training that was last year, and I was telling them something that no particular task is too small. Do not say, let me give, I give an analogy that you told a staff, like maybe like I'll use it like a staff to go and get water, like go and get water from the tap, and when and that staff is supposed to take the bucket to the tap. And you told another staff that after this staff takes the bucket to the tap, you get the water in the bucket, put the water in the bucket, and bring the water down to the office. And these two staff, they actually achieved or they actually did what you sent them to do. And when you want to celebrate someone, you start celebrating the one that carried the water from the tap down to the office, and you left and you didn't celebrate the one that actually also took the bucket to the tap. So it doesn't work that way. So it's good you acknowledge everybody's tasks based on what you have. No one is insignificant. So it's very, very important. So, and everybody wants to be seen as important and valued. So the author actually pointed out that assumption is during the course book. So the writer also spoke on employee retention as a valued purpose. Employee retention. Effective organizations are dependent on achieving as high level of stability in their human capital as possible. High level of stability. What does that mean? You need to actually reduce the rate of turnover. You need to reduce the rate of turnover. So that's an effective organization. You must reduce the rate of turnover. You must be able to retain your employees. And one thing the author also pointed out, which is actually true, for people use that word in Nigeria, that if you're in a government establishment, job security. They also point out that there's no job security anywhere. No employer can promise you job security. No employer can promise you job security.
I totally agree.
So that's just the truth. And that thoughts, I actually share the same thoughts. I usually tell people, even those in the government establishment, as the case may be, we read then while we were in school that if you want job security, go and get a government job. When you get a government job, that's what we need then. But actually, in reality, nobody can actually promise you job security. But actually, you can actually have a strategy, which is an effective HRO business strategy that can help to retain your employees. Those employees, but you cannot actually tell, as I said before, human behavior. You can never depict human behavior. You can never say, okay, this person is going to stay here for the next 20 years. But you can put in policies that can help to reduce the rate of turnover, as the case may be, to check your turnover rate. But you can never tell these people, this set of persons are going to stay here for the next 35 years, the case may be. People will not have to stay in your community retirement. So that's very important. So the author also went further to say that HR business strategy is the glue that binds all the aspects of people management into one holistic approach. When you have a robust HR business strategy, it helps to manage people properly. And what is managing people? It helps to engage people in the organization. It helps to also retain staff in your organization. It helps to retain staff. It helps to have a human capital stability. Not when you just have turnovers. Today, you see some people get to a company tomorrow. You see the staff, they are gone. You see you see a new face this month. You see a face this month. See a new face next. Every month or every week or every 2 weeks, they are changing staff. So that's not. They are not having a human capital. And when you don't have a stable human capital, stable human capital, you will not be able to have a stable business progress. According to the author, not able to have a stable business progress. There will be no development, national development, high value staff if you cannot. That's true. So the author went further to talk about the myth of change management.
Sorry, Simeon, can I interrupt a bit here? Going back to the retention, I just want to make a statement, something that stood out to me, where Paul said zero, that you should note that you shouldn't celebrate if you have zero attrition rates, because it's not a good thing. Because you do need an optimal retention rate, but it shouldn't be at zero. So there should be balance. It shouldn't be so high, but then it shouldn't be zero, because that zero stifles the injection of new blood. So you do need to have, there needs to be, it's like a pipe. You have to make sure that fresh water is coming in and then old water is going out. So that stood out to me. I just thought to put it out there.
I saw that too. That's true. having zero attrition is, you should not celebrate zero attrition. It should be a balanced one, be a balanced attrition rate, but it should not be high turnover. It should not be high. So it's very, thank you very, very much, Isn't for that. Thank you for keeping that. That's the help. So the myth of change management, they also talked about change management and HR business are synonymous. Without the need for change, there's no need to produce an HR business strategy. Truth. If there's not going to be a change in organization, a change in how we do things, how people do things, there'll be no need to use to have an HR business. Business as usual just requires an operating plan, more of the same. If the main purpose of HR business strategy is to create a competitive advantage through people, it implies that you have to change the way you manage. That's true. That's true. If the purpose of HR business strategy is for you to have a competitive advantage through people, if it means you guys having a competitive advantage through people, having to project, having to get to the future that you have designed for organization through people, you must definitely have to change the way things are being done along the line. You must definitely have to change the way you manage this. It's very, very key. That does not necessarily mean that, however, that people themselves have to change. It may well just mean bringing in new people. Either way, we need to be clear that we mean what we mean by change. It's very important. In addition, you have a change management plan. Very important to have a change management plan. It doesn't really mean that the people are going to completely change. It just means that you bring in new people. Okay, let me just make a case in point. Like, let's talk about organization. Can you? Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but you went off at a point.
Okay, I think my Bluetooth is down. Okay, can you hear me now?
Claire, I can.
Okay. So
I
as
hope
I was
everybody
saying,
else
I
can.
said,
Can everybody else hear? Yes, Simeon. Can people put comments so we can know that you can hear him? Yemi, can you hear? Yemi, can you hear him? Can everyone hear him? Please, can you just put in the comments that you can hear him? Okay, yeah, okay, yes, they can hear you. Please, Simeon, go ahead.
Fine. Okay, fine. So as I was saying, I said change don't necessarily mean that you have to change the people, change the people over there. It just means that you have to maybe bring in new people. That can also be an aspect of creating or making changes in the organization. I just want to bring up something like a case in point of like maybe you have like the Gen Zs and you have the Gen Y in an organization, which you have the millennials and you have the Gen Zs. There are some maybe an organization that maybe only people you have there up to maybe the moment or that moment were just millennials. So, but you need to maybe bring in some fresh blood, like maybe that Gen Z's people that can actually bring in some new feeling or new insight and new skills to support the organizational growth or towards where the organization is heading to. So that can also be an expression of change when we talk about change. So it's very, very important that we look into it. And the author went ahead to talk about different attitudes of people. We also talked about that people will be resistant. Some people will be resistant to change, and some people are resistant to change because they don't actually know what kind of change you are bringing. So I usually tell, there was one time I was we're trying to do change. I actually drafted a change management plan for one organization. So I told them that you have to discuss, which is the first step towards bringing in change. You must discuss this plan change with stakeholders. It's very important. It's very important that the staff knows the kind of change that you are bringing, and they have to understand the purpose, the reason for the change. You should not just bring in change from nowhere as a CEO or as a managing director or as a manager without you having a conversation with the staff on having a buy-in from the staff. Okay, I think that's on another level. They have drivers to change. So, but they also talked about different attitudes of people in an organization, and they also categorize these attitudes of people
into the first one, which were what I mentioned one earlier, but let's look at the four. The terrorist kind of people. They are the employees who feel they have been so badly treated by the organization and they are capable of doing damage. They just feel that, and they voice out their opinions publicly, even when customers are there, clients are there. You can see sometimes when you go to some supermarkets, let me use that as an example, you see their staff saying that anything we talk, Oga don't listen. Anything I will say, Oga don't listen to it. Anything I will say, Madam don't listen to us. So those are the employees that feel that they have been treated badly in the organization. They feel that and they voice it out. Those are terrorists. They actually do everything to just to put the organization in a bad light. And these are categories of people you can have. And we have the other one is the mercenaries. The mercenaries, it might be all right while they are on the good side. When things are going well, when everything is working towards favors them in the organization, they will be very all right, talk good about the organization. But when things stops favoring them, they move to the other side. They start, even though you're laughing. So when is one
it's funny now. Does that not this? Well, let me not talk too much for somebody. Let me keep quiet.
So those are the mercenaries. So what? So they just work for you. They work for your good when the good is going good well. When everything is going well, but when it's no longer going well, they have left you or they go to something else. Talk about it. So they now move to the whole stages. I mean, these aspects, people are actually fall into this category. On the other hand, they may not actually create havoc, but they are certainly feel trapped. They say, okay, they are not that they are happy with the whole thing, organization, but they just feel trapped there. Maybe because of their salary, because of situation, this is how they pay their bills. This is where they pay their bills from. So they can't just leave the organization. They just feel that, oh, I don't have any choice. I don't have any option. Let me just be here. They just be trapped there. Those are the whole stages. And the fourth one, which every organization wants to have, which I preach and which I want, which is the best of all categories of staff, is the apostles. The apostles. These are your brand communicators. They are part of your brand. When they say your brand anywhere, even some of them, when they leave your company, they keep on being a company apostle. This is ideally what everyone wants. They're solely committed to the cause and regardlessly spread good words about the company. So these are the four categories of staff that the author mentioned. So the challenge of the HR strategy is simply to create an environment. That's where the author was concluding. The environment where people feel their working life is part of something much bigger than their day-to-day tasks. This is very important. I don't know how people need to do this, but I just sometimes have conversation with CEOs and some board members, and I tell them this: you must be able to look at your people and not just the work they do. It's very important. I think there's a mind shift now going on globally when it comes to work-life balance. There's a mind shift going on globally. Somebody's asking a question. What's what?
I've answered. She wanted to know the third category, so it's hostages. Okay. I hope I've answered it right, Elizabeth. Yeah.
Okay, I think there's a global mind shift when it comes to, like, call it a mind shift, or there's a change going on, a positive change that people are beginning to see. They are beginning to be more concerned about the people that do the work and not just the work they do. That's very, very important, and that should be a core part of our strategy as HRO business strategies. So that's where the author concluded that particular chapter, or that's why I want to draw the line when it comes to chapter 3, that people should be able to feel that they are part of a bigger thing than just a day-to-day work life. Thank you very much, Isn't.
Okay, thank you, Simeon. You're going to do chapter 5, but let me just put a comment that also stood out to me in this chapter.
Fine.
Are you there? Can you hear me?
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
I can hear you.
All right. Okay. So there was a part that that Paul said talked about how it is, and I think people have made that comment, maybe not just for this book, but even in previous books, where you have your senior executives, they want a quick fix. They just come and say, I want this thing happening now. They expect HR to be the magician and, you know, solve the problem. Meanwhile, these things are not of things that will happen overnight. And of course, they may have come about because of things that have accumulated, right? So and they expect you to have a quick fix. And then what it is that, you know, HR is now tempted because you want to, you know, follow the instructions. You bring these vitamins, this magic quick fix pills, you know, things like that are those fluffy things, surveys, team building. Oh yeah, let's go for building exercise retreats. Meanwhile, you are just patching the cancer. You are not treating the cancer, because you need to delve deep inside to really check the root cause of the problem. You know, you can't go for retreat and sing Kumbaya. Meanwhile, there are issues, underlying issues. Yes, you will go for retreats, eat food, you know, play volleyball or play football, come back and still come and face that matter. You know, so that's what, you know, the author is saying. The author is saying that these things don't guarantee efficacy. You know how it is with homeopathy. I don't know if anybody knows homeopathic medicine. I've had to use homeopathic medicine at some point in time. So what the medical people don't believe in it, because they feel like this thing is your mind, you know, it's all about your mind. These things don't work, you know. So that's how he's likening the quick fix things to, because you just keep on putting those quick fix vitamin pills to cure your cancer, but in the end, they're doing more harm than good. So he's saying, delve into the problem itself, you know, make sure you go to the root of the problem, address it, you know, instead of using that thing. Because you know how it is when you're trying to patch a wound, you've not really treated that wound, you've not taken care of the wound, you're just putting a plaster over it, it just worsens the thing. And he also, one thing he said, I'll use to conclude, he said, an individual-centric HR business strategy values each individual. So make sure that your strategy is individual-centric, because you cannot use the same brush to paint everybody, right? You have to address things on an individual basis. So yeah, I just thought to bring that up. So Simeon, back to you for chapter 5, and then I'll come in at the end.
Okay.
I think we're a bit pressed for time. So if we can compress it, so that we can finish hopefully by 9:30, that would be great.
I think, okay. I think I will just, my battery is quite low.
Okay.
But I just came in, so I just have to.
Okay, just go. Just
so
do,
I just want to say some few things, and I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, thank you very much. So I just want to mention some few things that caught my attention in chapter 5. Chapter 5 is actually, I will not say is the most interesting chapter for me. But I actually like chapter 5. Chapter 4 and 5. I actually like chapter 4 and 5. The author started well. Chapter 1 and 2. Chapter 3 was interesting as well. But chapter 4 and 5 is something, I think, because I think is what I do every day, and it just connected with me. Chapter 4 and 5. Okay, chapter 5. They actually talked about that, as you just earlier mentioned, isn't it? Isaiah mentioned that there's not a quick fix. It's not a quick fix. So that HR or business strategy is not a rush job or a quick fix. That it takes careful planning. It takes planning and careful implementation by all. So the author was already talking about the topic, or the caption for that particular chapter was, are you mature enough for the HR business strategy? Are you mature enough for HR business strategy? So so you see so many times, so HR officers or professionals are pressured, as I said, they are pressured to make decisions that they are not meant to make at that moment. It's just like in the case of when a staff, like in a consulting firm, where I function, you see when you want to do recruitment, you see a manager just comes, or the MD or the managing partner or the managing director, that, oh, we need to do this recruitment now. We need to source for this staff, knowing that this client needs this staff in the next 2 days. I know that there's a recruitment policy that says that it takes 2 weeks for us to deliver a particular candidate to a client. So, and because it starts with there's a procedure in which we carry out that particular recruitment process, or recruitment exercise rather. So you see, but people just sometimes CEOs just want this thing to be immediate. Let it happen now. So it's very important, and the author pointed out that HR business strategy is not a rush job or a quick fix. It needs to be There needs to be an holistic approach involving everybody. It needs to be carefully planned out. And it's to involve everybody. Everybody needs to be involved in making it happen. And it's written here that whatever people say HRO is, that's what it is. So hopefully you're already appreciate that your HR department does for you, but you would not be the first to either have serious doubts about what HR people are unsure exactly what the role is. I think these have actually happened. When I saw this, I just remember the scenario with a particular CEO that says that, okay, why do I actually need an HR department? Why? What are they going to be doing for me? What are they going to do? I met someone like that and said that I don't need one. But when I begin to explain to the person, this is what HR department will help achieve in your business. This is what you help achieve even with your staff. The man started rethinking that, oh, you actually need an HR officer, or as the case may be. So some people are actually confused of what is the HR department be doing. And the truth isn't it that I've also found out with some HR officers, that's something they just throw into the ocean, if I should use that word. They throw into the sea. They never had previous experience of HR functions. And when they just get to a company, they want to start up the HR department just because of the opportunity came. So, and when they get, they don't actually know what they are going to do. Now, thank God for HRO mentorship group that we can actually ask questions. That's why I've actually encouraged my friends to be part of it, and some of them have actually joined. So you can actually ask questions. People will help you out. Giving you answers. But some people don't actually know what the HR department is all about, what it stands for. And this thing is not peculiar to some CEOs or some persons. So the author actually pointed that out, and there are different perspectives on the HR's role, and it gives the employee and he brought out two perspectives. I don't know. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, okay. The author actually brought out two perspectives from different CEOs, and the first one was from I think Luke Johnson. He sees HR department as not adding to the bottom line, if I should use that word. HR department doesn't really add to the profitability of the business. So he just sees HR department as personnel administration. That's the the traditional HRO function, as the case may be. So it just see that it's personal. What they do is just to do maybe payroll, that's take maybe clock in, clock out, as the case may be. They just manage attendance or manage some few things. We don't see HR department as a strategic partner towards increasing the profitability of the business. So that was the perspective of Luke Johnson. But there's also another different perspective, which was from another CEO, and his name is Paul Walsh. That was the other perspective, that sees HR department as HR role as very crucial to the success of the business, because it involves you achieving business goals through employees. And when you properly manage your employees, you can actually achieve those business goals. So I think you just take it on from here, because I think I have a lot to say, but maybe as you speak, I will just be able to connect. Let me try and get my phone on.
No problem. Thank you, Simeon. You've done a fantastic job for the guys, for the men. Thank you so much. Anyway, so let me just add a few things from chapter 5 and we'll conclude. So interestingly, the way you said this thing about HR, right? It's very easy for CEOs to say, oh, HR is not doing anything. But, the author says that HR teams are only as good as the CEOs that hire them. So if you say they're not good, that means you're a crappy hiring manager. However, the question I ask myself is, can the CEO even actually determine a professional HR person? Because Paul says that unlike other professions like doctors, engineers, and I think this could be up for debate, we can talk about it in the chat group, unlike doctors, accountants that have a standardized body that, if you do anything that flouts their rules, you risk not being recognized as a professional. we don't necessarily have that in HR, and I thought about it like, but what about all these other CIPD? And he was like, but yeah, because I thought about it. If you have someone that flouts HR rules as a professional, do we really, our bodies, is it that standardized that will say, okay, you are no longer a HR professional? So what we have is, and we've talked about this thing before, where we have people that just, once somebody is in the company, they say, what is this department to shove? Go to HR. HR is simple, and then so you just throw the person into HR, and the person is just like, and the person doesn't know. He just starts looking for how to swim or float or drown. So that's the thing about HR. So sometimes you have people that are not standard professional, people, and then you have a CEO that doesn't even know his left from his right, and he's dealing with somebody who doesn't know their left from their right. Then there's chaos. So yeah, I mean, you see lots of this happen, regularly. It's just a sad thing. I mean, you could go on and on about examples, but hey, another thing that really interested me was the HR management maturity skills. It says to determine if your organization is a high value one, it gave a ranking, right? A ranking from stage -2 all the way to stage 6. I'm not going to go into details, but what was interesting to me, because stage 6 sounded so really nice, utopian. I think maybe that's where Toyota is. And that's why the author said that Toyota, you can't find so many examples like Toyota. But there was a school, Reykjavik Business School, that did an academic study, and they used a sample of 18 organizations to check at what level they were. And there were no organizations that were in level 5, stage 5 or stage 6. They all stopped at stage 4. And stage 4 is the part where the HR person is a business partner. So yes, things are standardized, but they are not just quite there yet. Yeah. The HR gets into autopilot from maybe stage 5 and stage 6. So it just tells you that we have a long way to go in terms of maturity of organizations. And this is coming from a Western context, though. I'm sure if we come to Nigeria, I don't even want to say what stages, if they were to do a sample test size testing, what stages the companies would. That's a discussion for another day. So I pondered on it, and I said, could it be that some organizations have elements of different stages, right? The fact that, a company may have an element of stage 5, but it's just that it just has a component, so it cannot be regarded as stage 5. It's possible that a company may have a component of stage 5, maybe a component from stage 1. It's possible. It's just something that I was pondering on. But he says that a HR strategy needs to be clear and consistent, that while you aim for perfection, just know that it's a journey without end. You keep on making mistakes, learning, going forth and all that. And then a HR business strategy requires quick wins to progress as well. Now, before we go there, I remember that people were commenting a lot on a particular statement where we talked about HR being the scapegoat. I remember it was a trigger in the group. People were talking about it. That how, the CEO holds on to the HR as a scapegoat for their poor people management skills. That's what I said, where HR does not know, a CEO does not know his left from his right. He will just throw everything on HR. But the thing that I like what he said the HR professional who knows their value will not allow it. It's either you plan your exit or you find a way to manage it and make sure that, I think somebody made a comment about that, you and I would say, whatever interactions you're having with your CEO, document these things so that it's not a case of his word against yours. You document whatever it is that you have put in place. And then, whatever you have to present, you present with data, celebrate your wins so that it doesn't look like you don't know what you're doing. Anyway, moving forward. So the author says that, a HR business strategy requires quick wins to progress as well. So you may not achieve so much at the same time, but whatever win that you have, celebrate it, take note of it. And he said, a few suggestions to transition a business strategy into a HR business strategy. First of all, involve your teams and departments in cost cutting, encourage innovative ideas which generate revenue. Then the last, key points that he talked about, the ones that stood out to me, says key points on HR maturity analysis. Notes that there are, as much as you have lessons to be learned from success stories, there are also lessons to be learned from the failures. So don't just look to the success stories of organizations, look to their failures, because there are lessons to be learned from there, and then learn and don't do the things that they did. Then it's also honestly not about HR titles in an organization. It's not about whether you're a HR director. That doesn't mean that your company is mature. It's about whether the employee potential is valued or not. How do you place the employee? That determines the maturity level of the organization. Then a HR business strategy is only as good as it's allowed to be, right? And then HR processes and tools cannot be implemented effectively in isolation. They only function together. So those are my own comments on chapter 5. There were a few comments that I wanted to touch on, but were really spent for time. So maybe, we can address them in the group. But thank you, Simeon. It was fantastic co-hosting with you. And I hope that this is not the end of co-hosting with guys. Please, guys, take this as a challenge. See, it was really, I am sure you can agree with me that it was exciting hosting with having a guy for a change. Yemi, what do you think? So I look forward to where I'll just sit back and just be watching the guys talking amongst
Simon,
them.
please come again. We started another book. Please come again, Simon. Or
Yes,
drag others.
drag others.
It's part of talent scouting. Help us scout for talents, male talents.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Oh my God.
That's true. But all right, I'll come again, but maybe not the next one, but I'll come again.
Okay. What SNA cannot do does not exist.
Yes, so I have lots of
Isn't
magic up my sleeve.
Izzy actually did a good job. Izzy actually did a good job. When she reached out, she was able to reach out and everything. It was cool. I was glad when she reached out, and I could not just turn down like use the word offer. So I could not turn down the offer because I thought that my usual time of settling down is 9 p.m. But she told me that, because of the whole thing, so it have to be 8 p.m. I said, that's fine. I'll try as I can to be available, at least. And it was nice. And I actually learned a lot this evening, sharing knowledge with you and from the book. That's cool.
Yeah. I did learn a lot too from, sharing with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ezine and Simon. That was exciting as always. Time is really fast spent. I can bet that Simon's dinner is super cold. We will need to
super cold. I will need to just warm it up.
Highly sacrificial. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have another session on Friday. Very interesting session. This weekend is back to back. Stay tuned and please, I assure us all that this knowledge we are accumulating both on the job at work, paid trainings, personal trainings, these webinars we do, this book reading, even through our socialization will pay off massively. That I can assure you without any iota of doubt. One of my colleagues on the same platform in the last 18 months has changed job 3 times. And she just suddenly realized that once she does an interview, she passes. I said, that is what happens to you. You will have absorbed so much knowledge, even you will not realize. But the people talking to you, they will see value. Another colleague of ours on the same platform too, the head of HR left, and they reached out to him to say, look, each time we speak with you, we don't think you even need somebody over you. They put him on acting position for 3 months, and then they confirmed him as full-fledged HR today. And he gives a lot of credence to all the wonderful people he has listened to on this platform. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much once again, Simon. Thank you so much. As I wonder what we will do without you. Ladies and gentlemen, today is not a weekend, so good night. All right. Bye, guys.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Let's continue the chat in the group.
Yeah. Thank you, Simeon. Thank you, Yemi. And thank you, everyone, for being a part of this. Thank you. Good night.
See you again. Bye.
All right.